Will, I appreciate you making the time today. You've got a long track record in the ETF world from your early days at iShares to building out ETF securities to leading gold trust services, which sponsored the GLD ETF. Now you're the founder and CEO of GraniteShares. That's a big arc of experience, right? Before we dive into Yield Boost and some of the strategy questions my audience keeps asking, I'd love to hear about your story. What made you step out and launch GraniteShares back in 2016? And how did that turn into what it is today?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, Sean. Great pleasure to be talking with you today. A little bit about myself. I'm from Scotland originally, from the northeast of Scotland. And I started my career in London and was working with iShares, or BlackRock, was probably most people would be familiar with these days. And that was really the dawn of the ETF industry. So I was young, was really right place, right time in terms of working on this new product called an exchange traded fund that was taking off kind of very quickly. And as that grew, I think I fortunately was able to see that this product was going to become really quite big. And with that, I wanted to try and get a piece of the upside, in this what was then a very nascent industry.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started to look for an entrepreneurial opportunity and found a startup company that was called ETF Securities. The company no longer exists now. It was sold to a much bigger company called Wisdom Tree. But I started this company and had some equity upside in it, and we grew very rapidly from about 150 million assets under management to over 30 billion. And in that time, we experienced rapid success. I ended up moving to the US and starting their US business, and I've stayed here for the last 15 years. And that kind of gave me that entrepreneurial experience. And I think once you've had that entrepreneurial experience, particularly in a company that's been successful, it's very difficult to go back. So afterwards, I was the CEO of the GLD ETF, and we were looking to do a number of things there that, again, were more entrepreneurial, which didn't work out in the way that I would have liked ultimately. So left there and started my own company, GraniteShares, in 2016. Now, we were lucky to raise venture capital money. So we raised money from Bain Capital and started the business. In other words, launched our first ETFs in 2017. And then we've been, steadily trying to launch more products and build up awareness of the business since then. And so fast forward from 2017, we're over 10 billion now in terms of assets under management. We operate all around the world. Main business obviously is here in the US, based in New York, but we offer products on most major European stock exchanges. And then we have a team in Asia, which is distributing mainly the US products into local markets such as Japan, Korea, Taiwan, etc. So really a global business that has grown pretty rapidly, but specifically over the last few years.
The questions I get asked all the time from my viewers is this concept of, you refer to it as NAV, I'll call it NAV erosion at times, right? So my response is always, with these type of funds like Yield Boost, you have to look at it more as a business balance sheet or a rental home, right? You're going to have income, you're going to have expenses, and you have to really look at the ROI of that investment, as opposed to a long-term growth stock. Can you talk a little bit about NAV erosion and how you feel about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's hopefully a fairly simple concept, in the way that I explain it. But obviously, people can tell me otherwise in the comments. But the concept of NAV erosion, when it comes to something like Yield Boost specifically, is just a function of the underlying going down in price. Mm-hmm. So, for example, if we have the Yield Boost Tesla ETF, which is TSYY, we are selling a put option as part of the strategy on an underlying ETF. In the case of Yield Boost, it's a 2 times leveraged Tesla ETF. and then we'll buy a put option on that same ETF. Now, the only way, therefore, that the underlying goes down or the NAV goes down is if the underlying goes down. And if the underlying goes down, it's going down because the value of Tesla stock is going down. So in this particular year, I think as we record this video, Tesla's down about 15%, give or take, year to date. So it's going to be a challenging environment for anybody who's invested in the stock, in a YieldBOOST ETF as far as the NAV is concerned, or anything linked to Tesla. So NAV erosion in of itself is just a function of the underlying going down in price, which there's nothing abnormal about that. I think the YieldBOOST solution, which is different to covered call ETFs, and covered call ETFs and most covered call ETFs in the market, they give you 100% exposure to the downside. What YieldBOOST tries to do is to give you less than 100% exposure by buying protection in the form of put options against that extreme downside movement. So you'll see, for example, on a big down day in Tesla stock, for example, the YieldBOOST ETF typically is down less than Tesla stock, and that's a function of the put spread methodology that YieldBOOST employs, whereby yes, we're selling the put options to generate that high yield or high income for everybody, but at the same time, we're also buying a put option to try and protect against the downside. So, again, we don't think of the concept of NAV erosion if we were stock investors. If we buy Tesla stock and Tesla stock goes down by 10% or 20%, we don't think of that as NAV erosion. But that's exactly what's happening. The value of your investment has gone down by 10 or 20%. And that's purely as a function of the underlying going down.
Yeah, thank you for that example. Do you think we're still early in the income innovation cycle, and kind of where do you expect things to go over the next couple of years?
Yeah, one thing I can say is that this is definitely an area of the market that I think is growing rapidly, and there's a huge amount of interest in. Now, that may be obvious because when you talk about income, who doesn't want to have income, who doesn't want to generate yield in a portfolio? So that has been a popular. Dividend investing more broadly has always been popular. So I think we're in an environment where the concept of options-based income is very important. As the president has said, numerous times, he wants interest rates to come down, not go the other way. So I think investors are also conscious of the fact that there's a limited window, perhaps, where you can still earn your 4% or whatever it is in relatively risk-free money sitting in the account. But we might be in an environment quite soon where that 4% changes to something a lot lower. And so people are also trying to stake out the higher yielding assets at the moment in anticipation of perhaps yields or interest rates coming down.
As we talked about, prior to recording, my strategy of how I live fully out of the brokerage, right? All of my W-2 income rolls in. I'm accumulating growth, closed-end funds, and covered call ETFs or funds like YieldBOOST. I'm essentially trying to grow my dividend income that will snowball and cover all of my expenses, which allow me to live free from a 9-to-5 job, right? Hence the Paycheck to Portfolio brand. How would a fund like YieldBOOST help my cash flow cycle and ultimately free me and my viewers from, the corporate America golden handcuffs, if you will?
Well, I think the first thing is that YieldBOOST generally is a concept, and obviously each YieldBOOST fund is different, but certainly the single underlying YieldBOOST fund, so whether it be TSYY, which is underlying linked to Tesla, or NVYY, underlying linked to NVIDIA, or XBTY, which is underlying to Bitcoin, or COYY, Coinbase, those are a lot higher yielding than the broader yield-based ones linked to underlying NASDAQ or S&P 500. And so the relevance of that is the yields are a lot higher. So you might be talking about 100 to 150% on a single asset underlying. You might be talking around 50%, for example, on a index or broader index underlying like NASDAQ or S&P. That puts YieldBOOST, just for context, typically on any given day among, if not the absolute top, among the top yielding, highest yielding ETFs in the country. So automatically that gives you a clear value proposition, just like our leveraged single stock offering gives people the opportunity to earn 2 times the performance of an underlying stock on a given day. Then YieldBOOST is giving that exposure to a very, very high yielding asset. So there's a big utility value in having something that generates a high amount of income. Now, just to be clear, it's something that we've got to be honest with people and say that there's no reward without risk.
Sure.
And so, because when you generate a high level of income, you're also taking on a higher level of risk. And so, specifically, what that means is that you have more volatility in the underlying NAV because the underlying is more volatile. And as we talked about with the comments around NAV erosion, you have underlying instruments that can move up and down, quite rapidly. So you're taking on a bit more risk. But to the buy and hold investor, adding something that can add that kind of yield in your portfolio could be useful in terms of consideration. So we see people using YieldBOOST as a complement, and once upon a time, people might have bought a mutual fund from a large mutual fund company that claimed to give you a bit of growth and income all in the same portfolio. And actually what happened was you got probably not too much growth and not too much income. And we see that world, bifurcating now with ETFs, where people can be a lot more precise. And we sometimes talk about our own ETFs just as tools in the toolkit. And whether you're looking for hyper growth in the form of, say, leverage, or whether you're looking for large-scale income or yield in the form of YieldBOOST, it might be sometimes better to try and get the right tool for the job and blend those together, as opposed to just buying one particular fund that maybe doesn't do the job well in either direction.
Yeah, no, that's a great response. Thank you. Last question here before I let you go. And again, I appreciate your time. If someone's just discovering GraniteShares today, especially YieldBOOST, you can talk about all your products. What's the one thing you wish they knew and understood for a first-time investor?
I think the biggest thing with YieldBOOST, which is a nuance, admittedly, but it's certainly worth understanding, is that YieldBOOST ETFs themselves are not leveraged. You'll see online in different places misinformation about that. YieldBOOST ETF is not leveraged. It's just a put spread strategy where we're selling an option and buying an option. The nuance is we're selling an option and buying an option on underlying leveraged ETFs, but we don't hold those leveraged ETFs within the fund. It's just a put spread strategy on the underlying. And there are ways specifically that we do that to achieve it. So it is true that the secret sauce is derived because we sell options on a leveraged ETF. We do that because if you sell options, say, on a stock, then all things being equal, if you sell options on a 2 times leveraged version of that stock, you have 2 times the notional premium or 2 times the income. So it makes sense, therefore, that when you look at the income of YieldBOOST or the yields of YieldBOOST, you can see those yields, which are, if not the highest in the market, certainly among the highest yielding products in the market.